June 15th.
And her daughter turned 1 today.
Was that her birthday?
She had her, it was C-section.
Oh.
So mine was close. My birthday on the 10th, my son's birthday on the 11th. And I spoke in station 5th. My younger son's birthday. And my grandson,
It's useless to forget.
April 16th. We're thinking we'll be able to repeat it.
Well, my son-in-law and my grandson's are 2 days different.
I apologize. I usually do ask if there's anybody in the audience that wanted to address the council briefly on something not on the agenda. I'm crossing my fingers that all of you are here for something on the agenda, so thank you. We got kind of, I think our, I see you, thank you. I'll get ready in just a second. Oh, yep, give me 10 seconds. I think everyone's joy of being back together is evident with the council that can't get together outside of a meeting, so here's our chance to connect socially a little bit. All right, I think we are good to go. So the Tuesday, June 15th, 2021 meeting of the Eden Prairie City Council is now called to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Those of you in the audience this evening may not realize, but this is every meeting we almost have something new that we're bringing back to the pre-COVID day, and tonight the chairs are fairly back to normal, allowing people to be in here at the numbers that were pre-COVID. So again, thank you. Yep, there you are. So thank you for being here this evening, and if you're joining from home or streaming this later on in the week, welcome. So just a brief announcement about formal open podium, which is a little bit different than the informal time I just chatted about. But open podium is an opportunity for Eden Prairie residents to address the City Council on issues related to Eden Prairie City government prior to each council meeting, which typically occur on the first and third Tuesday of each month, but we're on a summer schedule at the moment. These open podiums that are more formal occur from 6:30 to 6:55 here in the council chamber. If you wish to speak at open podium, please contact the city manager's office at 952-949-8412 by noon of the meeting date with your name, phone number, and subject matter, which allows us to be better prepared for you. If time does permit, after scheduled speakers are finished, the mayor usually will open the floor to unscheduled speakers. Open podium is not recorded or televised. If you have questions about open podium, please do contact the city manager's office. Before we have the proclamation presentation, actually tonight it's a contribution, I did want to just acknowledge that we do have a new police chief in town. And we do welcome Chief Matt Sackett, who is now, I think, in your second, are you beginning your third week? Beginning your something. Time is flying, but we really appreciate you being here. You follow in the footsteps of some super quality chiefs in the past, and everything we know about you, you are carrying that on. So we thank you for your service and for, yep, we can clap, absolutely. You know more than all of us here what a great department you lead, and we're very proud of our Eden Prairie Police Department and the culture that's been evident through the decades, and we appreciate them for what they do. So thank you for leading that organization. All right, Mr. Getcho, we do have a contribution acceptance this evening.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I will turn this over to Mr. Lotthammer. Your Honor, council members, we tragically received word that Mr. Jeffrey Kirst, who some of you might know as a longtime election judge for us, and also a contributor to the Eden Prairie Foundation over a period of time, had passed away, and his estate identified contribution through a life insurance policy to come towards Parks and Recreation, and that is for $45,790. You'll also recall a couple meetings ago we had a contribution from an anonymous resident for $25,000, and we're suggesting that these two are put together to help with the improvements at the senior center, and that would commence within the next couple of months to help open up that facility, upgrade it, make it more accessible, and also more inviting for people to just gather there ahead of their class or before their program. So we think that'll be really beneficial use of these funds. We would also, in his honor, have a bench with a nameplate inscribed on it as part of this too, to recognize his efforts and contributions. So tonight is the resolution asking for acceptance of these funds from Mr. Kirst's estate.
Thank you. Every gift is significant. The amount on this is really significant. We're very appreciative. Council, is there a motion to adopt the resolution accepting
Move
this
to adopt
contribution?
the resolution accepting the contribution in the amount of $45,790.22 for the estate of Jeffrey Christ to go toward the improvement of the senior center.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion or conversation? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Great. All right, approval of the agenda. The only item I would add is that under council member reports, which is on 14A, I'd like to have our new chief, Matt Sackett, come forward and just give the council an update on the police body cam situation, because I know that we get asked about when our police are going to begin wearing that. So that will be during my council member report time. Anything else to add to the agenda?
Mayor, one consent item. It's on goldenrod on your table. It would be consent item Q that we would ask that you add, and it's a resolution in support of one of our businesses in town to support their application for a state employment development, economic development dollars from the state of Minnesota's Job Creation Fund. So, as you know, we have many businesses in town that we've supported their applications for different economic development funds, and this would be a resolution from the city supporting their application for those funds.
Great. Anything else? Is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended, as suggested?
I will make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, moving on. Either of the council minutes from the workshop held on May 18th or the city council meeting, any corrections, additions, items to question from those minutes? Mr. Freiberg, you've been really doing a great job thoroughly reading them in the last few meetings, so I'm assuming you did this time and they passed snuff. So, all right. So could I have a motion then to approve both the workshop and, not that we don't read them, by the way, it's just that he's been particularly, okay, I just want to be clear on that. All right, I just got a stare there. Is there a motion to approve both the workshop and the regularly scheduled meeting?
I'll move to approve the following city council minutes. Council workshop held Tuesday, May 18, 2021. City council meeting held Tuesday, May 18, 2021.
Is there a second?
I second that.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. No reports of advisory boards or commissions. Consent calendar. Are there any items A through Q that you wish to just momentarily question or to actually have pulled and look at individually? If not, Councilmember Toomey, would you, since you were itching last time, would you like to make the
Sure.
motion?
I will move to move for approval of items A through Q on the consent calendar.
Great. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we have just, we have a couple if you count the city code amendment, but we have the one larger public hearing tonight, Morimoto City Homes. Mr. Getchell.
Thank you, Mayor and Council members. Morimoto Homes has acquired the property at 9360 Hennepin Town Road that they would like to develop into 16 owner-occupied townhome units in groups of 3, 4, and 5 units. The surrounding land uses include residential and commercial property to the north, residential property to the west, and residential property and open space to the south. Hennepin Town Road, as you know, runs along Highway 169. The Planning Commission recommended approval of this project, and it does require a PUD review and a rezoning and a preliminary plat. There is a proponent is here to provide an overview of the project, and the staff and the project proponent could answer any questions that the council may have.
Great. Come forward. Welcome.
Evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. Pleasure to be in person with you this evening. I will see if I can start your PowerPoint.
Likewise,
here.
by the way. We just love being in person.
Yes, fantastic. So Morimoto City Homes is a special project for me because it brings forward home ownership and affordability, something that developers are struggling to do in this market environment. So I'd like to, first of all, before I get into the details here, thank all of the Eden Prairie staff. They've been a pleasure to work with. I've worked with a variety of different staff people through the process, so I wanted you to know that. The project site is approximately in the blue circle here, and for those of you familiar with the 5 L's of new construction, one of those is land, and our goal here is to achieve affordability through density. The site is 2.8 acres, and we are proposing 16 units on that space. A component of our unit design is that it will include main level living, and it also has the potential for ADA accessibility in some of the units. And in exchange for delivering affordability and home ownership, and my goal is to do so without dependency on subsidies, public subsidies, I am requesting some waivers to the Eden Prairie City Code in order to accomplish that goal. So a few of the items, including the lot size that is under the city code requirement, the lot depth that is under the requirement, and slightly narrower main drive width than what code requires, and shortened parking stalls. And with density, we don't have the 1,000 square feet of usable open space per unit. And in exchange for these, we will deliver affordable housing as a public benefit. On the site, there are a couple of wetland areas that are presenting challenge for stormwater management. And those 2 wetland areas will be outlotted and deeded to the city. And none of the stormwater will be piped out into those wetland areas, so we're going to treat the stormwater on site. You can see the green rectangular areas are subsurface infiltration systems, and these systems are designed to capture and slowly drip the stormwater perviously through into the groundwater system. I did conduct a neighborhood meeting prior to Planning Commission, and I listened to the neighbors that attended, and one of the primary concerns that we discussed was the preservation of trees on the north property line. So the property has an extensive amount of trees, and so I made a point to visit the site with Matt Bourne from the city, and we looked at all of the different trees, and we did identify some trees along the north property line that could probably be saved. Some of these will be, if you will, a game time decision during excavation. Our goal is to not get into more than 40% of the root system when we're excavating and preparing the pads here. And so it'll be instruction from me to our excavator to do their best while they're doing excavation work to preserve as many of those trees as possible. So we did update our civil plans to include preservation of those trees. From a financial standpoint, it certainly makes sense for us to preserve as many trees as possible because it costs money to cut them down and it costs money to plant new ones. The site does have natural seclusiveness to it already, even though it's nearly immediately adjacent to Highway 169, and I'd like to preserve that. And so our tree replanting plan is above what code requirements are, and we'd like to use trees as a natural screening both on the perimeter, the outside of the site, and within the site to give it that seclusiveness feeling. So some fun parts of this are visual images of our architectural schematics. So this is looking to the northwest from the southeast corner of the site. I did have concern at Planning Commission about the usable space in what would be the backyard, essentially, is what you're looking at. So the doors that you see are rear exit. They're not the main entrance to the units. And so this would be the backyard. And a couple of things that I spoke about with my architect is, could we do some type of privacy fence or even privacy screening with additional plantings? And we think that would be a really effective way to create some privacy for each unit owner. And then pervious patios off of that rear door would be an option for the unit owners to add, so they'd have some outdoor, private, enjoyable space. And there we go. Here's an image from the interior of this, interior of the site. So 2-stall garages, and we'll talk about the floor plans in a moment, but the idea here is to have main level living capable units. So you could pull into your garage, walk directly into the main living area. You'd have a kitchen, a living room, and a bedroom, all on the main floor, and a bathroom. And here's floor plan. So main level living home ownership units are in short supply. A lot of home buyers or would-be home buyers that are looking for this type of product aren't able to find anything that fits their needs, and it's becoming more and more in demand. And so we think that's a really important element of the unit design, is having main level living. These units also have a full basement. The basement is accessible from the garage. It doesn't have any sleeping rooms, but it would be storage, additional storage, or space for the utilities, and then potentially some recreation space down there if a unit owner wanted that. And they are 2-story, so on the second level, additional bedrooms and a bathroom and storage and closet space. So one of the challenges with affordable housing is, how do you keep it affordable? And I'm sure you're all familiar with the NOAA term, and this is similar to that. After speaking extensively with Jonathan Stanley in Housing and Community Services, we talked about a variety of different formats we could use to preserve affordability. And we agreed that one of the easiest approaches here would be a deed restriction. So a deed restriction would be recorded with the property and would require that a future buyer of that particular unit also meet income cap tests. So that's a good way to keep those units affordable. The affordable units that we're proposing would be 20% or more of the total units, and the household income would need to be under 115% of the area median income in order for a buyer to be able to purchase one of these units. So we would take an application from the buyer, and Housing and Community Services would review that application and apply the test. And I feel this is a good way to deliver ownership and do affordability and keep those units affordable. And as a reward to those buyers, they'd be able to purchase one of these units at far below market value. And why Morimoto? So Henry Morimoto was lender liaison at the Minnesota Housing Finance Agency, passed away last year. He had a firm belief in home ownership and affordability and was a really good partner to work with. And so I'm proposing that we name the plat and the association in his honor. And in doing so, I think that we carry this mission forward of delivering home ownership and affordability. Appreciate your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Council, any questions?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions.
Do you want of the proponent or staff or both? Or
No, just proponent. You are saying 115% of AMI to qualify to buy a affordable house in this development. So is that, so if I am single, I'm under 118, whatever that dollar amount you mentioned, and so I am eligible for the buying that house now. Then I got married, my income went up, right? 2 months later after close. And now what?
Mr. Mayor, council members, thank you for the question. So we can only do the income test at the time of acquisition. So there isn't any way we could certainly confirm that the applicant is not currently married at the time of purchase, but it would be at the time of purchase. Now, when you in this scenario go to resell the property, you'll still be required to have the buyer purchasing the unit meet that income test.
Oh, that's very good. So somehow you can, homeowner association, somehow you can define that, but they cannot sell to somebody else is more than that amount.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, council members, the deed restriction would prevent that property title from transferring to a new owner until that affordability test is applied and met.
Very good. Another question is related to the trees. That how many trees that we are planning to cut to make this happen, and what size?
Mr. Mayor, council members, I don't have an exact count of trees. It's a lot. I wish I had an exact figure for you. Within our civil plans, we do have a tree inventory, and it does specifically show which trees are to be cut and which ones are to be preserved. An easy number I know that there are 5 heritage trees on site. So heritage trees are big.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, only one of those can be saved. So, and that's right in the middle of one of the wetland areas. So when we take down a heritage tree, we have to replant it at replant an incremental amount. So it's not a 1-for-1. We have to plant more than just that one tree.
Is there a plan to have a charging station in the garages, or at least ready? So wired 220 whatever voltage needed to ready so that homeowner quickly can add their own.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, council members, that is an excellent point. And before I answer that, I'll say I've recently read a report that there are an expectation that about 10% of all vehicles will be electric vehicles by 2030, if not more, is what they're projecting. I think that was don't quote me on this, but a National Highway Transportation analysis. And so we think it's really important to have the capability to be able to add a charging system in the garage. These different manufacturers, though, they have different types of charging systems. So we wouldn't be able to install the charging system, but we can pre-wire. So it's a 50 amp circuit that's specially wired from the main panel to the garage. We will be installing that in every unit. It's much more cost effective to run that circuit at time of construction. So when a unit owner purchases one of these and they have an electric vehicle, they can simply have, I don't know if it's simply, I don't know the process exactly, but they can have the particular charging system for their vehicle directly connected to that box that's already present in the garage.
The affordable housing units that you are talking about, is that same dimension as the other ones, or is it smaller or different design, or is it change anything in that?
Yes, so Mr. Mayor, council members, it is important that when you're doing affordable housing that you don't have scrimpy, smaller less fashionable units
Thank you.
that are affordable. So from the exterior, they're all identical. And from the interior, same finishes, same materials, same types of appliances. The difference in the units themselves, though, is most likely it'll be the interior units and not the end units. That would be the affordable designated units.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Council, any other questions?
Yeah, I do have questions. One, going off of Mr. Narayan's, on the affordability, how do you keep it when you sell it the first time? Are they only allowed to go up to a certain amount? How do you keep it at that point? Because obviously people would normally want to sell it for whatever market rate is. So what's the rule?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, council members, excellent question, and that's one of the difficult things to preserve. So although we can put a cap on the income level for the buyer, we can't restrict through the deed restriction what the resale price of the property is. So theoretically, it's possible that one of those affordable units could be resold at a gain without doing some type of subsidy recapture. And I can touch on that for a moment. But they could theoretically resell it to a buyer who is below that income cap, who could purchase the property for a significantly higher amount because they have a large down payment. The kicker to all this is you still have to qualify for the mortgage. So for someone purchasing a unit, just for an example, at $400,000, that's designated affordable, and they resell that unit for $500,000, that buyer under the income limit still has to qualify for the financing on that purchase price amount. But if they have a large down payment, there really isn't a way to control that. Now, one of our goals with the affordable units is to finance them through the Minnesota Housing Finance State Agency. And by doing so, Minnesota Housing has a subsidy recapture with their financing program, so that if you resell one of the units at a large gain and your income increases, there can be a subsidy recapture tax on part of that gain. So it's something better than nothing.
Good. I assume a school bus can turn around the same place that a fire truck can?
Mr. Mayor, council members, my civil engineer tells me you could turn around an 18-wheeler in that hammerhead at the end.
Okay. It's always a question, because sometimes at one point we got school buses that could get in but couldn't get out. I do have some question on behind the homes on the north side. Just how deep are those lots behind, once you go out the back door? How close are they to the existing homes, basically, is the question. It was impossible to tell on the drawing.
Mr. Mayor, council members, so there is a 10-foot setback requirement from the lot line to the boundary of each lot and block. And then there is a 9-foot distance, I should say, between the line of the lot and block to the structure. So there is between the structure wall and the property line 19 feet approximately.
Okay, so it's very small then. It won't be on much on the south side because that has preserved open land there. So will there be any privacy fence between both the existing neighbors and the new neighbors?
Mr. Mayor, council members, we want to limit the number of fences. Fences are not adding to seclusiveness and nature. And so the more plantings we can use to create that barrier, the better. Not planting any fences around the perimeter of the property, but there is a possibility of adding a fence between each unit in that backyard area to give each unit owner some privacy.
Okay. I know that in another development looked at in there, the homeowners were very concerned about, the new people wandering into their backyard to play, probably children, not adults. And of course they can always put up their own fence, but that's up to them. But there will be more trees or some kind of trees back there to have some kind of privacy as they look out their living room window.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, council members, if you look at the landscape plan, I can pull up that slide again, but There's a pretty, well, it's okay if I can't bring it up. There's a pretty significant line of trees along that north side that are replanting.
Okay. Also, what about, will any of these homeowners be able to put, say, a swing set in their backyard? Or is that going to be no? You know, can you put out a permanent or semi-permanent structures that's definitely attached to the ground like a swing set rather than, say, a barbecue cart on wheels?
Mr. Mayor, council members, they would have 9 feet behind the wall of their structure where they could add something to that effect if they wanted.
So they could have a tot swing set, probably.
I'm thinking of the size of a tot swing set. There might actually be room.
Some of the smaller ones. You know, some people, not everyone has a whole lot of room for just some place to get their kids out. I think that's all that I have, other than I like the concept, you know, and I like the main floor living of this, and it's got size enough for, you know, a family, albeit, you know, probably a limit on the number of children, but a decent-sized family could certainly live in these comfortably. And I do like the fact that the price is a bit more reasonable, so it's a good project.
Councilmember Freiberg.
Thank you, Mayor. You might have answered part of this. I got a question that has to do with the line of trees that backs up to Garrison Way. Now, yeah, I know there's 63 significant trees on the property. It's taken out of there. And that you're going to remove 43 of the significant ones. I'm guessing, are those 43 now, from when you walk that property now with Mr. Bourne, are they going to be concentrated? A lot of those going to be where we're talking in that northwest area that's going to be bordering Garrison Way? Okay. I don't mean to sit, you know, as far as pick it, but it's important to me as far as on it, because I know the property, and I know that the property's behind it too, and I guess to feel good and comfortable to know that there's enough left behind as far as for a barrier. I think that's important to the people that live there.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, council members, the majority of the 43 out of the 63, a majority of those are concentrated where the hammerhead turnaround is right now, and along the entire north property line. And so when Mr. Bourne and I walked the site, there were a number of trees along the north property line that are very likely to be saved, and they're desirable trees. And so if we can keep, some of those are mature maples in there, and if we can keep those nice trees, it does a number of things. It saves me money, which we like. It's nice to have mature trees. And so for the unit owners that are on the north units to be able to look out their back window and see mature trees, that adds to the marketability of the units. Keeps the neighbors happier, which is important to me as well. And I think from an ecological standpoint, it's good to save mature trees. So as many of those as we possibly can save. Unfortunately, those trees that are in the hammerhead turnaround have no place to go but into wood chips around the wetland area to the west.
Well, I appreciate your concern on that, because that you're taking the time to walk that property with Mr. Bourne. I like when I hear that it's important to you what the neighbors think, because that's real important to us also, you know, the up there. As far as the project itself, the way you have it laid out, there's a lot of positives to it, you know, as far as on the way it's laid out. Thank you.
And Councilmember Toomey.
Hi. Thank you for coming tonight, and thank you for putting this project together. It's really nice to see some affordable housing hopefully coming into Eden Prairie. I do have a question. How long will the deed restriction be? How many years?
Mr. Mayor, council members, the deed restriction that we have in mind is a 30-year deed restriction.
30 years, that's good. And then I read somewhere in the information you provided to us that they were going to be compatible with solar, so to have solar panels installed. Is that correct?
Mr. Mayor, council members, I'm glad you brought that point up. I had some conversations today with the Center for Energy and Environment and with Excel Energy. And here's what I learned. I was under the misimpression that adding solar panels was a good environmental thing to do and maybe one of the best things that you could do as a home builder and developer. And I was educated on that today. The Center for Energy and Environment informed me that it's much more cost effective and much more efficient and a much better use of dollars, since dollars are finite. We're not talking about unaffordable townhomes here. To put those dollars into additional R-valued insulation, windows, and other types of energy improvements during the construction process. The other thing I learned is it is not necessary to wire for solar panels at the time of construction. And then the last thing I already knew was with associations, it's difficult to just do whatever you want on the outside of the building. If you want to put up a solar panel, you have to get board approval from the association to do that. So I think the best course of action here in regards to solar panels is to allow within the bylaws the unit owners can install a solar panel in the future if they want to. All the wiring is done externally, so there isn't any interior through the sheetrock and attic type stuff. And create a process that would maybe streamline that for the association board, or give maybe even special permissions to the unit owners that would give them some leverage over the board if they really wanted to add a solar panel in the future.
And that would be all units, not, okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. We can always ask more questions later if we open this up to the public. So thank you. If you want to stay close, we'll call you back up.
Great, thank you.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience that would wish to address the council on this particular proposal this evening? Yes, please come forward. Give your name and address.
Good evening. I'm Mike Amundsen. I live on 9565 Garrison Way, and that's on the south border of the property. So thank you for taking the time to hear me, Mayor and City Council members. If I can get this adjusted right. I'll have to start off by saying this. Of all the things that I've seen proposed in the last 15 years, this one is, I would say, by far the best that I've seen of all the things in terms of being a neighbor of the property. So I really appreciate that this is being considered compared to some of the other ones that have been in the past. I do have some concerns about it, however, though, and one of them I think has to do with like the waivers being asked for. So like the average has to be like the city as council is asking for like 100 feet, or not the city council, but it's being asked for 100 feet, and now it's 60. So ultimately that means that there's going to be like the property is going to be closer together. There's going to be like less space between houses from front to back. So the backyards will be closer to the houses than is typical in most environments. That being said, that's not terrible. I'm just maybe looking for some tweaks on this. Also, kind of the group usable open space. The average is somewhere, if you look on like page, I think it's the bottom of page 3, I think it is, on the city council first reading. It talks about, the 6 other developments in the area and that have been approved, and they have like about an average of like 180 feet of group usable open space. So I'm hoping, if it's possible, to have like maybe just slightly less units to kind of get that more toward the average as opposed to being toward the bottom of the average. It's not by far the least amount of space of any of them, but it's it's about half the average or so. And the only other tweak I would ask is, I live on the south side on Garrison Way, so that is basically, there's a lot of trees that are going to need to be removed on there. There's a little bit of preserved land coming in at an angle, but if there's any way we can move those houses back to I guess that would be the north just a little bit. If you look at the plat diagram, there's like a group of 4 and a group of 5 houses. That fifth one in that, on the furthest one to the right is offset a little bit, and is it possible to have those all offset at that same amount? Because you got that fifth unit, and I think that's block 4 there, and that one's offset. Can they all be kind of in line? And that just, I only asked for that is because I want to preserve as many trees there as possible for my backyard. So, anyways, these are just minor tweaks, but overall, I'm happy with this, and of the things I've seen approved, this is by far the best. I did want to make one correction though on the fences. I think you mentioned that the fences, we could put our own fences up, and the Preserve Association, yeah, we're not allowed to put up a fence or whatever, so this is not part of the Preserve, so they could put up a fence, but we cannot put up fences. That's against the bylaws of the Preserve, so we can't put one up just because we want to. So,
Great.
thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience that wishes to address the council? Yes, please come forward with your name and address.
Garrett Pomerantz, 9671 Clark Circle. I'm one of the neighbors on the north end of the property. Couple things, I'll echo Mike's comments in regards to of the various proposals that have come through in the past years. This is definitely the best one. It fits the medium density. I certainly think it fits in the area well. The big ask, and this has been the same thing that keeps coming up with the proposals, is the tree line. I know on my side there are most of the trees there are right along the property line, and this goes both for me and any of the homeowners or town homeowners that would be in there, that maximizing the number of trees there is going to serve both of us the best, because it will not only create a barrier for my view, but also for their view as well. So I guess what I'd really like to ask is just to have a detailed map of the trees that are proposed to being taken down versus the ones that are going to be saved. And that comes because, like I said, most of them are right along the line. In the wintertime, when all the leaves fall, there's a big marshy area back in that property that's not really more than about 5 to 10 feet behind the property line. And then that area is wide open, which is where the townhomes would be during or after they're built. So, I mean, as many trees as we can save, I think is going to make all the neighbors, as well as any new owners that come in there, very happy. So that's all I've got. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Garrett. Anyone else wishes to address the council this evening on this proposal? All right, council, let's see. Let's go ahead and just close the public hearing at this point. We may move fairly quickly right into the motion. It's up to you all, but if someone could just close the public hearing, that would be great.
Move to close the public hearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. I feel like through your questions we've gotten a good sense on everyone's from a consensus standpoint. But if you do have additional questions, please let's ask them now. If you'll allow me just for a moment, I purposely chose not to speak before we opened up the public hearing because you all said it so well, and I really didn't have a whole lot to add. I do want to respond to the two neighbors that came, and I really appreciate you coming, and I think what I heard pretty clearly is trees, and we do need to look at that, and I'll say something about that in a moment. I will just say, though, when you have not a large parcel, 2 and whatever acres, and we're trying to do it all. I mean, this literally will be the first owner-occupied affordable housing complex like this that I remember. I don't mean the whole thing is, but at least to have some significance to it in a long, long time. To get that and get medium density energy conservation, tree preservation, open space, it just doesn't all work. And this council has clearly prioritized the environment for decades, not maybe each of you, but certainly the Eden Prairie City Councils. And of recent, we've really made an effort to prioritize affordable housing. So sometimes they stack rank. I mean, they almost have to in our minds as we try to do it all. I know, Kathy, you've been great through the years with all the energy conservation initiatives and wanting, solar up on roofs. And I thought that was an interesting explanation that you said too. But that if you have only so many dollars as a developer, put it into insulation, because the owner could at some point put solar panels on, but it's so expensive to go into walls and increase, or even to buy all new windows. So I would second that advice that you got. But so I just think it's very difficult. I will say I appreciate very much the developer saying that they'll carefully on site monitor the trees. I do think that's a great thing to say, and I appreciate you saying it. And I know that we all want that. I would like to think the city could help with that, or have someone out, maybe if we can get notification of the day that the bulldozer driver's there, because we've not gotten burned, but I mean, we've had instances through the last 25 years where it was literally a couple cases of oops, I mean, down on the bluff, with Settlers Ridge, and we just have had that happen before. So if we can help them and be out there. And then the other thing, it sounds like from the developer, there's going to be quite a bit of tree replacement. And I know, take it down a big tree and you put in a 6-footer or something, but I still use Hennepin Village as the classic example that we put in Hennepin Village on land that had been clear cut. And you walk down there today and it's just treed, wooded, canopied. It's beautiful. I know 25 years is a long time, but look at everyone's gray hair up here, not you, Lisa. I guess not you so much, PG, anymore either, but at any rate, 25 years goes by. I thought that was pretty funny. You'll get me later. But, nonetheless, the years go by, and trees do grow. And so if we can concentrate on the borders with tree replacement, which I'm sure you will, because the interior of the land's going to be homes. Okay. With all that said, Council, any last comments, questions? Do you need clarity? Councilmember Freiberg.
Last comment that I'd like to say, I do like the project a lot. I want to encourage you to sit there and listen to what I was telling you about the neighbors. I like your approach as far as on it. The neighbors, Mr. Pomerantz here, along Clark, along Garrison Way. If there's a way of coming up with, a cooperative aspect as far as revealing what you're going to have to take so that they are aware of rather than surprised. I mean, that's all I can do is ask as far as, because I think coexistence right there, that just seems to be the one thing that's going to be lasting, because I think what you've done with this project on that land is very, very good. But I want to encourage you to do that. Thank you.
It's a good point. The clarity and transparency, I think, is often so important. And of course, as a developer, as it was said tonight, it's going to maybe take, if you try to save 40% of the root system, it's going to be tough maybe in the moment. But I do believe the intent is there, and if the city can assist with that. All right, Council, if you are ready, if there's someone that can do the next 3 bullets of, 4 bullets on the other page 2 of the motion.
Adopt to the resolution for plan unit development concept review on 2.85 acres. Approve the first reading of the ordinance for the plan unit development district review with the waivers on 2.85 acres and zoning district change from rural to RM-6.5 on 2.85 acres. Adopt resolution for preliminary plat to create 16 lots and 3 outlots on 2.85 acres. Direct staff to prepare development agreement incorporating staff and commission recommendations and council conditions.
Second.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? Okay, let's vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Welcome. Wish you the best. Neighbors, thank you for coming in, and just keep in touch with us too. Feel free to keep calling us. All right, Mr. Getchell, Chapter 11, City Code Amendments. I think this is perfunctory unless I didn't read it carefully enough, but go ahead.
No, Mary, you're correct. You may recall that we devoted a good chunk of a workshop a while back to many different various code amendments that'll be coming forward through the course of the year. So we've covered some of these at workshop, but we are bringing 3 different code amendments. And Julie's actually, our city planner, Julie Klima, is going to do a really brief overview of the proposed changes. And then we asked that following a public hearing, because it is Chapter 11, so we have to have a public hearing on these ordinance amendments, that you approve the first reading of the ordinance amendments.
Okay. Julie.
You. So I do have a PowerPoint presentation that I'd like to share with the council just to provide some overview of the 3 different code amendments that we have this evening. The first one that we'd like to talk about is the group usable open space, and the developer mentioned this in passing as a part of his development proposal. So the current code requirements for group usable open space have been in place since the initial zoning ordinance was adopted in 1969. As you can imagine, the development patterns within the city, the establishment of a park system, and just the development trends that you see have changed over time. So the reasons to update the code, not only has that requirement been interpreted and applied inconsistently over the decades, but as development patterns have changed and we have now transitioned more toward infill development, there is less and less area to be able to meet that group usable open space, and that requirement might be a bit outdated. So through recent PUDs, we've seen a lot of requests for waivers with regard to group usable open space. And as a part of that, staff went to the drawing board, did a little research with other communities, and we found that most communities do require a usable open space in some way, shape, or form through developments. They do, on average, have a requirement of about 300 to 400 square feet per dwelling unit. In talking with those communities, they're experiencing the same struggles that Eden Prairie is, and they're talking about that a lot of folks are coming in and asking for those waivers, and they're looking at reducing their usable open space requirements as well. So taking that information along with the averages that we've seen in recent development, staff is proposing to reduce the group usable open space requirement to 150 square feet per unit. We also are proposing to amend the group usable or the usable open space definition. Currently it is a very simple and straightforward sentence that basically says it's area and facilities dedicated for recreation and active purposes. This definition is intended to provide more clarity so that as developers are putting their proposals together, they have an idea of what the city is looking for and knows what areas would count toward that requirement so they can meet that 150, possibly even exceed it as they're taking a look at their concept plans. The second code amendment that we're proposing to be addressed this evening is gross site area per dwelling. Again, this is one that's been in place since 1969, and its intent was really to regulate density. Density is already regulated through the comprehensive plan that provides a density range for each of the land use categories. Density is also regulated in the zoning ordinance. So to further complicate things, when you compare all 3 of those, there isn't necessarily alignment between what the zoning ordinance says for the density that is allowed when you calculate that with the gross site area per dwelling unit. So again, staff is recommending that this provision be stricken from code because it's redundant and quite frankly confusing for a lot of folks as they're trying to put together their plans. The third and final issue that is a code amendment before you this evening is with regard to parking. So there's essentially 2 categories within parking that we're hoping to address. The first is to address drive aisle dimensions and parking stall length. So currently code requires a 19-foot long parking stall in 90-degree parking situations and a 25-foot drive aisle. Through PUDs in the last couple of years, we've seen numerous requests for 18-foot stall length and a 24-foot drive aisle. Those have been approved through the PUD process and have found to be functional. So staff, based on the number and efficiency of those, is recommending that code be amended to allow that by right. In addition, we're proposing some changes to multifamily housing parking requirements. Currently, all multifamily units are required to have 2 parking stalls per unit, regardless of the type of unit it is. There's no distinction for efficiencies or studios or senior housing. And as you know, as a council, you've seen many different PUD waivers come through as a part of those projects. So staff, again, did some research with neighboring communities, developments that we've already seen go through the process, and we are proposing that efficiency and studio units be required 1 stall per dwelling unit. Half of those have to be enclosed. That's consistent with the existing language. For independent and active senior living, 1 stall per dwelling unit, with half a stall per dwelling unit to account for guest and general deliveries, parking, those types of things. Again, all of those, or half of those stalls to be enclosed. And for any type of senior housing that provides a level of nursing care, it would be 1 stall for every 4 beds plus 1 space for every employee on the largest shift. So we're just providing some additional clarification as to how those would be calculated rather than providing just a flat rate for all multifamily projects. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Council, any questions on either of the 3? Any of the 3? All right. If not, this is a public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to address the council on any of these 3 Chapter 11 City Code amendments? Seeing none, council, why don't you make the motion, and I'll give you one more opportunity to ask questions.
I'll make a motion.
Oh. Kathy.
All 3 of you at one time?
No. Go ahead then, Mark.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing and approve the first reading of the ordinance to amend City Code Chapter 11 relating to group usable open space, gross site area per dwelling unit, and parking.
Second.
Any further discussion or questions of staff? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. So even though we did it unanimously 5-0, it still will need a second reading because we didn't ask for the second. Had we, then okay, got it. All right, payment of claims. Any payment of claim items any of you wish to question? Okay, if not, is there a motion to approve the payment of claims as submitted?
I will make a motion to approve the payment of claims as submitted.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Freiberg.
Aye.
Councilmember Narayan.
Aye.
Councilmember Nelson.
Aye.
Councilmember Toomey.
Aye.
Mayor Case.
Aye. All right, moving on to resolution terminating local emergency. Mr. Getcho.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. You've alluded to returning to a sense of normalcy with our meetings and conducting our business, and this resolution is a big step toward that. In March of 2020, March 17th of 2020, the council passed a resolution creating a local emergency due to the COVID-19 pandemic. It allowed the city to be able to respond if necessary in terms of purchasing and entering into contracts that may be necessary during the pandemic. It also allowed you and many other commissions and groups to meet remotely. And so while we actually didn't use many of the powers in here, because as a council you did continue to meet and you were meeting quite a bit in person in a hybrid format, I believe we may have canceled one meeting in April of 2020. We didn't really need to follow through on some of this. We do feel, however, it's necessary to terminate. The council took action to create the local emergency. The council must take action to terminate the local emergency. So that is the resolution that is in the packet for your consideration this evening.
Any questions, council? If not, if someone would...
Move to adopt the resolution terminating local emergency.
Second it. If there's someone that would second
Second.
it. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed. All right. Moving down to appointments on student commissions. There are 5 different... Why don't each of us make a motion and we'll have a second of all of them? Maggie, is that okay? And then so, Councilmember Toomey, if you would start with the Flying Cloud Airport, we'll just go down the line.
I move to appoint to the Flying Cloud Airport Advisory Commission Alec Aldrich, Max Johnson, Pawan Katharia, Suchita Sa, Yash Salunki, and Zuhib Ibrahim.
Appoint to the Heritage Preservation Commission Andrea Porter, Devin Staton, Joseph Canham, and Luke Willett.
Point to the Human Rights and Diversity Commission, Hina Kazama Kirthana Ramanathan, Salma Awali, Shubhangi Mohan, Sophie Lundy, and Zudasi Osman.
Appoint to the Parks and Recreations and Natural Resources Commission, Adadi Nakami, Ari Cohen, Evan Lemke, Joey Schomer, Kamal Youssef, and Maria Zainen.
Appoint to the Sustainability Commission, Abi Rashikaran, Amaliga Tima, Anna Marchatella, Augie Stukenberg, Julia Harris, and Mutam Menakshiyandara.
You actually had a cool accent on some of those. I'm impressed. Is there a second? Second. We were all taxed. Before I take the vote there, usually I probably should have thrown this momentarily back to Mr. Getchell. I do want to say that we offer this annually to students from our high schools, Eden Prairie High, and also I'm assuming international, whatever, if you're an Eden Prairie resident. And we had more than 40 applications received this year. And they're really invaluable. I mean, they're wonderful contributors. They often do come to every meeting. Not only does it look good on their resumes, but they really bring a perspective and a viewpoint that is very important. And on some of the commissions particularly, they get very much more value. Well, they're valued in every one, but they get used a lot more. So that's what this is about. We've got we have motions and a second. All those, I think we can vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right. Quickly moving on to reports of council members. I get questions about why does Eden Prairie police officers, as of now, not have body cams functional, and we've been planning and we've been talking about this for quite a while, and it has been in the plans. I just want our residents to get an update on this because, sadly, every time there's a shooting across the nation and the body cam video is shown, or this most recent one with the federal agency, and they were not wearing body cams, and that suddenly was a big deal, and I just am aware that Eden Prairie police officers have not been wearing them as yet either. So I had asked our new chief if he would come up and just give us, but also give our public an update because they are coming. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. Yes, they are coming. Our original ship date put them arriving end of June into mid-July. And we haven't received any different word on that, but that's still kind of the time frame we're looking at. I think it's obviously a booming industry, so there's a little bit of time getting them built and getting them shipped out. But the advantage we have is it's going to be in a system integrated with what we currently use in our squad cars. So training time and integration time should be a little bit less than, say, if it were a totally new project. So a lot of staff on the ground looking forward to it and to get them going. Again, it's just waiting on that equipment to arrive and get it fully operational. So.
And just to underscore a couple things, we have dash camera right now on squads, and this will integrate seamlessly into that. And then a lot of the issues through the years with police body cams have been the storage capacity. We're ready for that. So, I mean, we're just really good to go, aren't we, as soon as the hardware arrives, and then a little bit of training, and we'll be good to go.
Yeah, it should be a pretty smooth operation with cloud storage and integration that we have. So.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Getchell, you'll probably turn it over to someone else, but the Highland Oaks Development Agreement Amendment request number 2.
Yes, Mayor, I could start with Ms. Jeremiah, and she may be turning it over to our city planner, Julie Klima.
Julie's been on such a roll, I think I'll just let her continue. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Julie.
Mayor, Mayor, members of the council, the city's received an application requesting that the development agreement for the Highland Oaks project be amended to allow the removal of a couple of specific trees. As you'll recall, in 2019, I believe it was, the Highland Oaks development was approved. That's on property just off of Girard Drive, 17-lot subdivision. As a part of that original development review, there was a considerable amount of discussion, particularly about saving a 53-inch bur oak tree identified as tree number 142. And then approximately a year later, the developer came back and requested that the development agreement be amended to allow the removal of that same tree as well as 5 other trees. The council opted to allow the removal of the 5 other trees, with tree replacement being provided inch for inch, but retained the preservation of tree 142 with that action. The lot that is in question, that tree 142 is on, is now owned by the homeowner. Mr. Terry Brown has submitted an application requesting that tree 141 and tree 142 be removed. The rationale supporting the request is he would like to address some drainage on the site, as well as remove the tree so that he could have access to that part of his lot to install additional conifer trees that would provide screening between him and some adjacent properties to the south. Mr. Brown is in the audience this evening. He did provide a narrative and photographs that were provided to you in your council packet. And there was also a communication of support that was provided by one of the residents that lives on Beehive Court that was initially present at the original development discussion, and he is noting his support for the removal of tree 142 and the tree replacement plan that is proposed for the site. Staff is recommending that the development agreement be maintained in its current condition. In part, that is because the tree removal, that tree replacement, that would be triggered by the removal of tree 141 and 142 would be challenging to provide on site. When tree replacement is calculated as part of the overall development, the developer has the opportunity to scatter those tree replacement inches throughout the development. In this case, we're talking about a single lot, so all of those tree replacement inches would be required on this particular lot in order to meet that requirement. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Julie and or Maggie, I guess, might be the question here, but when a developer is still building, the development agreement is what governs, and so is it really not the homeowner in this case? Like if this tree were to be taken down, would it be assessed in essence against the developer?
Mayor, I can answer that. So our development agreement is set up so it's with the initial developer, but it runs with the land. And so it technically applies to every future property owner, and they're obligated to comply with the terms of the development agreement. So even though the original developer was the one who provided this tree preservation plan, the current individual property owners also are required to comply with that. In certain cases, city code allows tree removal without an application, without a land alteration permit, but this is not one of those cases. And, considering that this tree was the topic of so much discussion and the council made very specific decisions about this particular tree, it was my opinion that this should be, the proper application would be an amendment of the development agreement.
Got it.
I have a question.
Sorry. Just got an itch in my throat there. I did go up and visit the property yesterday and actually had a visit with Terry Brown, and so this is not a public hearing, but I did offer him the opportunity to speak to us because it's his property and he's the person that has submitted this request to take the tree down. So if you wish to address us, you are more than welcome to.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. I appreciate you taking the time. Again, my name is Terry Brown. I currently reside at 11896 Germain Terrace in Eden Prairie with my wife and daughter. And we've been residents of Eden Prairie for about 26 years. Just a little bit of background. You've got some from Julie's comments. I began the house design process with Wooddale Builders in late September of 2020. I purchased the lot in December of 2020, which is when we also broke ground. In March of 21, I had a builder review meeting on site, at which time 2 items were brought to kind of my attention. One is that now that the house is situated on the lot, previously it was perhaps one of about 3 or 4 different designs that could have been on that lot. The design that we have was not contemplated previously. So now with the house situated on the lot, the drainage issue came to light. And the recommendation from the engineering firm is that we should build up the land, the ground from the foundation away from the house to get the proper drainage. Also perhaps put in a perpendicular retaining wall away from the house, again to move water away. And then also to contour down the unexcavated area that's adjacent to where the house sits. I apologize for not having a PowerPoint presentation for you tonight. Hopefully the photographs that you have, I can walk you through those if that makes a difference or provide some help. But in this process, tree 142, which prior to March I had no idea how much conversation there had been about it, but in this contouring process, tree 142 would be removed. And just as importantly as the drainage issue is that by contouring the land and removing the tree, this gives me much more complete access to about a 3,000 square foot piece of my lot. It does have other larger trees than tree 142. There are a couple of really large heritage oak trees in there. But giving me access to allow greater use of this land and enjoyment by me and my family, and then also, as Julie commented, to enable the proposed planting of some evergreen trees that would give me screening between my house, the house on Lot 5 that will be built, as well as the homes that are on adjacent lot down on Beehive Court. All of the rooms on my side of the house that face this are all daily use rooms. They're the dining room, the kitchen, the sunroom. So looking out there, if we can provide some screening and have more of a nature look as opposed to looking at other homes, would be very advantageous for us. Additionally, the back of our lot, it's a lookout lot. It's not a walkout, it's a lookout, and there's a fairly steep grade at the back of the lot. So there's not a lot of room back there for us to kind of take advantage of with plantings. And that would be our plan in the area to the south. In looking at this application, I reviewed prior council meeting minutes and planning commission meeting minutes, and again I learned about all of the reviews that have taken place on the overall tree inventory, as well as tree number 142 in particular, and the desire to retain that tree. And I understand that. However, there's a new perspective because the house is now situated on the land. And if we don't take that tree out and contour that land, I don't have the access to a significant portion of my lot. I assure you I'm not trying to take the tree out just to remove the tree. My intention is to create the most appealing environment for my family and for our neighbors. And I want to minimize the potential for water intrusion issues prior to final grading and turf installation. I have spoken to homeowners on Beehive Court whose lots are adjacent to mine, and both of them spoke at prior meetings. And I've also spoke to my neighbor on the other side in Lot 7 in the Highland Oaks development, and received no objections to my plan. Finally, I just say that if we don't contour this area, it limits my access to use and enjoyment of this portion of my land. It would significantly limit my ability to plant trees that would provide an immediate visual screen. Increases the potential for water intrusion. And so those are my reasons for wanting to do this. I appreciate your time tonight. I also want to acknowledge the Eden Prairie staff that I've interacted with in this process. Matt Bourne, Sarah Strain, and Julie Klima. They were all very helpful, very responsive and professional in my interactions. And I also want to acknowledge Mayor Case for taking the time to come and visit me yesterday at the lot. It was very kind of you to do that. So that's my comments.
Thank you. If council did have any questions, we'll call you back. But so, council, questions, thoughts? A couple of you are, I guess, maybe just Councilmember Toomey are new to this. I know that Councilmember Nelson, in minutes, has had some strong opinions. I believe you were, because we were. I'm trying to think when we were elected. Yes. So, who would like to just share some thoughts? Councilmember Freiberg.
If I could, Mayor, has there been a determination of the health of this tree? Because I know, you're talking an oak tree, and it's like if you're talking a big ash tree, it's a good question to ask of an ash tree. Because, has anyone made any determination of that? Have you ever had anyone else tell you it's not a healthy tree? Or that?
Mr. Mayor and council members, in my submission of my application, there is a letter from a certified arborist who I had come out just for that purpose and other purposes to look at the other trees. And in his view, that tree is a healthy tree. He said that there's some stress in areas, and it's in the packet, but it says there's some stress where limbs have been removed. And this tree is, if you've seen the photographs, is not one 53-inch tree. There are 3 stems coming out of a 53-inch base, but it's been trimmed up pretty significantly. The canopy now is pretty high up.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Councilmember Toomey.
I do have a question for you. So would you be willing to plant additional trees on your property if you took that one down?
Mr. Mayor and council
members. I know you
members,
can't replace the caliper inches of this one, but I'm sorry.
Mr. Mayor and council members, when the development plan was approved, there was a tree replacement plan that was identified. And there weren't any trees to be planted in this particular area of my lot. On the north side of the lot, I believe there are 3 Norway pines that are supposed to be planted. But there is a significant amount of property on that north side of my lot where in my discussions with the landscape team is that I want to plant more trees than those. I have plans to put in some river birch trees and other trees in that particular area. So yes, there's opportunity, and there are plans to put more trees in. In this particular area, and I don't know how easily accessible my photographs are, but the first photograph, which just is labeled 142, my lot line is about 1 foot over from that tree. All of this area here belongs to lot 5. I'm right here and it angles straight back, so I don't have a ton of space to plant more trees, and my intention would be to plant more native grasses, wildflowers, things like that in that area to color it up, but put that line of evergreen trees along that lot line so that there is this visual screening.
Maggie, are you saying from what you said before that Mr. Brown now would be responsible for the tree replacement numbers of caliper inches? I'm not sure. I'm not putting words in your mouth, but I mean, there was, according to the developer's agreement, every tree was taken down. This is a heritage tree.
Right.
I believe it's inch for inch. I forget what our
more than an inch
tree preservation. So, side, and again, I'm trying to picture it was 3-prong. I don't know if you get assessed for the base of it or the 3-prong, but the total caliper inches might be 3640 or something. I don't know. So would he be assessed that then, and then how would that work?
Right, and maybe that's a question for Julie, how they would apply it if he only owns a single lot, if the city would, I mean, we've approved the tree replacement plan for the entire development, and as noted before, tree replacement was across the lots. I would think if he's the one asking for the tree to be removed, he'd be responsible for the replacement, but maybe Julie can give input on how they would apply that.
Mayor, members of the council, how that's been applied in the past to post-development agreement has been if the tree's been removed, it's been replaced on an inch-per-inch basis, which is why with the First Amendment request, those 5 trees that were removed, we're at an inch-for-inch.
So, I mean, in this case, a lot of those trees could be put back onto that lot line or this property, in theory, right? And then if not, if you either cash in lieu of, or a few could be placed around the development or something. I'm just throwing that out as not as an argument, just as a clarification.
So,
who hasn't spoken? Yes, Councilmember Narayan.
Yep, thank you. I have a question. So if we do the tree replacement plan, how many trees we need to put in to replace this tree?
Mayor, members of the council, I believe it's 68 caliper inches that would be required to be replaced on site.
And that counts both tree 141 and 142?
Yes, sir.
And the one I will add, and again, I'm not lobbying for this, and I told Mr. Brown that I would come and be fairly agnostic here and neutral, and that's what I'm really, truly trying to get from you all, what you want to do. The tree 141, I mean, I believe you even said could stay, but if you look at it, it's the unhealthiest. It's underneath another canopy. It's leaning. That's the one that probably should go, either way. So it's not like, oh, let's take 2, just because we're taking the one. The one that's the most significant is tree number 142, which has the 3-prong oak coming out.
I have another question.
Yes, Councilmember Narayan.
So, Julie, the homeowner suggesting there is some water aspect of it. We don't believe that's not accurate, or so
the drainage flow, whether that's a problematic issue.
Yeah, problematic, and do we feel that's? Go ahead, Robert. Thank you.
Mr. Ellis.
Mayor Kay, City Council members. I think with the trees gone, it's a clean slate. It's much easier to manage drainage. You can have a number of options depending on how you want to landscape your yard. With the 2 trees, you could still manage the drainage. Your options are limited. Might be a little bit more costly too, because you're working around trees and tree roots. But I think either scenario, the drainage can be addressed.
Mr. Lothammer, along with this line of thought, though, Mr. Ellis and Mr. Lothammer, we've been in this predicament in years past where, we try to save a tree, and, oaks are root system can be fragile. And so if you begin to do what you need to do for drainage, do you therefore then become more, does the damage to the tree become more possible or susceptible to damage? Because if you stand there, we've already cut into the hillside down about 8 or 10 feet. So we've already gone, I don't know how far the oak roots have come out, but so if we maneuver that more, are we creating a situation where, in 5 years this tree is going to be dead anyway because we had to cut back into the hill?
So I'm going to go at this from my understanding that the grading has been done to the extent that it can be, and those trees were protected as best that they could be. So, but the answer would be if additional grading was done and got into that root system, you are risking that depending on the depth and the spread of those trees. Anytime that we and the developer identify trees on a plan, they need to be understood by us to be healthy trees. And so these are currently in our standards as we count them, or we wouldn't count them, but as we count them, they are healthy trees confirmed by the arborist. if you start to grade too close to them, absolutely, that you could put them at risk by damaging the root zone.
Okay. Council? It's a tough one, isn't it? That's why we get paid the big bucks. If you're listening out there, we don't get paid the big bucks. I just want to be very clear about that. That was humor, but it is why we get into this, to make some hard decisions. So
I think it's twofold. I mean, there's a drainage issue. There's also the issue of this, the way it's placed on his property. I would be okay with the removal of the tree if he were willing, if the homeowner is willing to plant other trees in the area.
well, from what we're saying, I believe that would be the understanding, that the replacement caliper inches would be assessed against the browns. And where they got planted, I guess, would be a negotiated something. I mean, 68 caliper inches, it's a lot of trees if they're 3-inch trees. And there's not room on that land for probably 20 trees. But again, at that point, maybe there's some other negotiated something, but a lot of trees could be put there. And actually, if you think about, again, how quickly trees grow in 10 to 15 years, he could do a lot of really helpful things for neighbors on the south side. What's the road down there?
Beehive Court.
Beehive Court. Already there are a lot of trees on the Beehive Court property side that are going to stay. Obviously, it's on their private property, but he could thicken those up a whole lot and thicken up the line with the new house on that side. If you do walk the property, and I'm very, very much trusting our staff that it can be done. The water, that you can make the water go the right way eventually. It's a little bit problematic though. It's going from, if you face his house, the water will go from the left side down his backyard, create some kind of a swell, and get into the land on the lot on the right side, and go down that person's backyard. I mean, it's more problematic if you can't work that slope on the left side. So, but I love trees, and it's a beautiful 3-prong oak tree. That being said, it's it's kind of 3, but it's 1 tree. And if there was a lot of additional tree planting done, again, in 10, 15 years, the cities, I always look for, what's the best for right now, and then what's the best for the city in 10 or 15 years, and maybe what's the best for the city in 50 years. And those are all a little bit different. It's people that live here now, it's people that are going to live here in 10 years, and maybe our children and grandchildren, what's best for the city, the state, our earth, that kind of, I'm serious. And so if we get a lot more trees planted that are high quality trees, and he can work with the city on what to plant them, I think that's not, I'm really truly ambivalent, because I think both of these have some positives to them. So I really want to lean on all of you.
If there weren't a problem with the drainage, I would say keep the tree, but a potential problem, but there is, so.
I have a clarification question to Julie. I have a clarification question. So if we had to replace 60 caliber, and did I hear that right, that we won't be able to do that in this plot?
Mayor, members of the council, the tree replacement requirements would need to be met on his lot.
On his lot, and your estimation is we will not be able to do that?
Mayor, members of the council, based on staff conversations, including with natural resources staff, some of the trees that are on the site he could propose at replacement at more than the minimum size. That would help come closer to meeting that requirement, but it's not likely to be sustainable to replace all 68 inches on one single lot.
So, more question. So, how many or percentage, or how many you think it comfortably fit in that lot, so we know what the delta is?
42.7.
Not 8? No, I'm just getting an idea. Is it 62? Is it 59? Or is it 30? Right? I mean, big difference, right?
So let me just take this a little bit. So one possibility is, again, I think Julie just hinted at this, do you buy 2-inch trees, 3-inch trees,
I
right?
see.
So
Yeah.
if trees are a little bit larger, already Mr. Brown talked about larger trees. That's one reason he'd like the oak to come down, is he'd like a row of some larger evergreens. So I'm assuming those eat up caliper inches right there, depending, and you can access it with probably a tree spade if the oak wasn't there. Otherwise, you can't get in there. So, I don't know that we're gonna. I think that's just something we gotta. If we went down that path, I would say one of our conditions would be staff has to sit down and really work with the Browns and figure out, what's reasonable, what size trees, all that. It may get to the point you may not be interested. It may the expense of it or something. That would be your call. But and then if there's extra caliper inches unused, maybe we send staff away with, I don't know what the result, maybe there's extra places on the Schweter property in general, or maybe there's cash in lieu that we just negotiate ad hoc, without an ordinance or something. We just figure that out. But so I think the first thing we need to decide is, oak tree saving or not, and then we'll figure the rest of it out.
I've got to say, I'm really irritated with the builder that, he kept coming back, and he said, yes, it was possible to deal with the drainage, but in fact, he did not. And so that's caused this whole problem for the person who's bought it. I would like to ask, do you understand if you have to put this many trees in, you may not have too much room for gardening?
Mr. Mayor and City Council members, I'm learning throughout this whole process. I didn't understand that I was going to be required to replace caliper inch per caliper inch. There's a lot of detail in our city code, and if you're not familiar with it, it takes some time to really grasp it. If I went backwards, I might say, I need a variance. I need approval, but I need a variance as well, because I'm not sure I can get all 68 inches on the property. Council member, I don't know if I'm going to be 40, maxed out at 40. I'm not going to be 68. I don't see myself probably getting to 55. I just don't know enough about all of those aspects. But if there is a compromise between new trees and some cash payment or whatever, I'm willing to consider that. The other portion of your question, I believe, is that in that particular area, I don't anticipate planting a whole lot more trees because there's this huge canopy there. And I'm not sure they're gonna grow underneath that canopy. Where I want to put the evergreen trees is open, up. And as the mayor mentioned earlier, trees keep growing, and in my view, there's not a lot of sense in trying to plant trees underneath huge oak trees because they're not going anywhere. But on this north side of my lot, it's wide open. You can see to the sky. There's nothing over there, and it would be, I think, nice for my neighbors on that side if I had more planting over there. So what my plan is if I get access to the south side, put in the screening trees, and then try to get as much as I can on the ground, native plants, wildflowers, stuff like that. Not turf. I'm not looking at trying to turn this into a sculpted yard. It's a natural area with some really beautiful trees, and that's my intention.
Thank you. I think the trees getting there is going to be a problem. I ultimately think this is a developer problem, however. I don't know what we do about it. I really dislike when we save heritage trees and a developer does not develop a lot so that the water drainage and such is adequate. And it sort of pushes our hand to say, okay, I've come back to you several times, now you have to take it away anyway. I will admit the fact that it's not a single trunk tree does make a little bit of difference to me than if it was a huge single oak tree. But I think everyone has to understand is if he literally can't put that many on, there's going to have to be a cash payment in lieu, or those trees will go someplace else in the city. Because that's what we've had developers do as well. And then unfortunately, it causes on his lot, but I'm really not happy with saying no so many times and then them coming back and forcing our hand by making the lot not appropriate for the building they put on it.
So someone's going to have to make a motion. You got to go one way or the other. So is there somebody that's willing to put one on the table? We can always vote it up and down, then we'll go to the other one. But is there someone willing to make a motion either to allow the tree to be taken down, that's the second motion, or to deny the application, that's the first motion?
I will make a motion. Actually, the first motion is to deny the application. So I'll direct staff to prepare an amendment to the development agreement reflecting the council's preference for tree removal and meet city staff recommendations for tree replacement.
And we're leaving that vague, I'm assuming intentionally. So is there a second? If it doesn't get seconded, it dies. And then we move, and then we need to make the motion on the second, on the other one. Okay, there is no second. So is there someone that would make the motion to deny the application for an amendment? We got to go one way or the other here, folks. So you either second that motion, and then we can talk about it and vote it down, which I would probably suggest the most, or someone makes that other motion.
I second it.
Seconded, okay. Thank you. I feel like it's, I don't know what, bingo, gambling, I don't know what okay. All right. We've done a lot of discussion. We can just vote it up or down. But go ahead.
Can I?
Please.
Just one clarification. So what we're saying here is the staff work with the owner and the replacement, and if the owner cannot meet all the replacement caliber, then staff negotiate with the owner.
Some type of...
Some
reasonable, whatever that means.
Whatever it is, to replace those trees somewhere else in our city, right? Okay. And the other point I just want to make is our city is blessed with a lot of good trees, right? So it's not like we are starving. Maybe this size tree, maybe it is, but overall, we have a lot of beautiful trees. So if the owner has a difficulty with the drainage, like Ms. Nelson said, I'm really upset at the developer as well, because the developer agreed now, all of us, our hands are tied. So that's the reason I'm seconding this, based on that comment.
So I'll become agnostic now and speak to this. Having gone out to visit it, and I'm going to put a caveat on it here, an explanation. I think all of you, I hope who know me, know this, that I love trees. And if you come to visit my property, it had about 4 trees on it when I moved in, and today there's 200 something. I just love trees, and I will fight to save trees. But at the end of the day, our people, our residents that live here that spend a lot of money to buy a house, also have rights to fully actualize their property. And so that's where we can tie the hands of a developer, I think, a whole lot easier, and that's where I'm agreeing with Councilmember Nelson, even though giving Steve Schweeters a little bit of leeway here that he did come back and say this would happen. So I just want to point that out. But nonetheless, when the whole land was being developed or laid out and platted, that's where this kind of conversation belongs more. Now that we have a homeowner that wants to move in with his family and fully actualize this piece of property and do well by it. I mean, he's lived in the city in 2 other houses and been real responsible with trees. And in my conversations with him yesterday, it's clearly an equal environmentalist, I believe, as much as I am. So I feel like at this point, to encumber a homeowner that at some point can take this tree down the way. What the consequences are, I don't know. But living on my property, I have some big old trees, and I took a massive one down last year that had limbs hanging out over the trampoline, and I was seeing my grandkids play. I mean, I want rights to take a tree down when I need to take a tree down, as much as I love trees. So I'm just going to tell you, I'm going to vote for this. I'm going to vote to prepare the amendment to allow the tree to come down, which is not where I was necessarily landing yesterday. So it's not a public hearing, but everyone inclined to allow one more person to speak? It's really, are you okay? I'm okay. Is that acceptable?
Your call.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. I will let you speak. Just give your name and address.
Yes, sir. Mayor, Council, my name is David Ringsmooth. I live on Beehive Court. I provided initial input. I've talked with Terry Brown. I'm going to share something with you that I hope eases your concerns about the amount of inches he's not able to replace on that land. I love to share this. This is a testimony of my life. I'll try to be brief. Before I moved in, I had a vision of being in the house that I now live. And in that vision, I was sitting in my office where I've been working for 15 years. And I left that office and I landed in the backyard. And I'm standing in the backyard and I see these beautiful trees all bordering on the north side of my land. And they're beautiful pine trees. There must have been 50 of them. Those pine trees were there, I thought, before the builder tore them down. My wife and I walked that land and we prayed that land because I believed those trees would stand. That's part of the reason why my wife and I were so passionate about this. I have other dreams and visions that come true. My son was injured shortly before we moved there, and it was anyway, I won't go into it, I'll cry. So I am proposing that there's going to be a lot of trees because I saw them. I'm not sure how it's going to happen, but I believe that there's going to be beautiful, tall pine trees, tall, short, all along that area, and it will be on multiple lots that I saw there. When I heard that he wants to put up those pine trees, that was just the first confirmation. That's exactly what I saw before I even moved into that house.
Thank you,
Mayor,
sir.
thank you for letting me talk.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate you sharing.
Thank you.
All right. So with that, Councilmember Freiberg.
Mayor, I just want to say something. Colleagues, that I'm really, really big on property rights, but I'm also really big on heritage trees. So you can imagine the conflict here. Okay. Realistically, I'm leaning towards that the biggest squawk is with the developer itself. You right now, are in a position you can be harmed if that tree is not removed. Councilman Nelson mentioned something, and it came up earlier, that it's not 53 inches one trunk. It's small trunk. And I agree with what Member Nelson said, that does weigh a little bit, as far as in my mind. So what you said, Mayor, makes sense, okay, as far as to move forward on it. It's tough. It's tough because that's probably 1% of our trees, I think, in this whole city could be said that it's that big. But without it, it puts you in a tough spot, as far as if we don't, allow it to be taken. So I just figured I wanted to put that support behind you on that one.
Great, thank you. Let's go ahead and take the vote. We have a motion on the preparing the amendment. In other words, this motion would allow the tree to be taken down, and then staff would negotiate with the Brown family tree replacement, possible cash in lieu of that, and we're leaving that intentionally ambiguous. All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. All right, so anything else to come before the council this evening? Is there a motion to adjourn this meeting?
Move to adjourn the city council meeting today.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This meeting is adjourned.